It is Freedom Friday, and my grandson asked me to record a Freedom Friday for his benefit, and that is what I'm doing today for Good Friday. So many things to discuss, and we're going to start off with one specifically, a question that he asked me that he is probably going to take on his own podcast at one point in time, which I'll be ecstatic to share and celebrate with him when he's ready for that. His mama approves it. I totally respect that. Now, my twin's gonna cringe because he says the one thing all influencers should not take on is religion. And yet on Good Friday, what a beautiful day to take on a very powerful subject. And yet I'm not going to use my own authority. I'm actually going to use a gentleman named Scott Peck. He wrote a book called The Further Along the Road Less Traveled. And if you'll bear with me for a minute, I'm going to literally read to you from his book on page 67 about the issue of death and meaning, fear of death and narcissism. But why are we so often excessively afraid of death? Is it primarily because of our narcissism? Narcissism is an extraordinary, complex phenomenon. Some of us, it is necessary as a psychological side of our survival instinct, but most of it, past childhood, is self-destructive. It is unbridled narcissism is a principal precursor of psychospiritual illness. The healthy spiritual life consists in a progressive growing out of narcissism. And while the failure to grow out of it is extremely common, it is also extremely destructive. When psychiatrists talk about injuries to pride, we call them narcissistic injuries. And on any scale of narcissistic injuries, death is the ultimate. We suffer little narcissistic injuries all the time. A classmate calls us stupid, for example. We're the last to be chosen for someone's volleyball team. Colleges turn us down. Employers criticize us. We get fired. Our children reject us. As a result of these narcissistic injuries, either we become embittered or we grow. But death is the big one. And just going to take a pause for a moment, and I'm going to share with you that this has a whole lot more depth as we keep moving through this. So nothing threatens our narcissistic attachment to ourselves and our self-conceit more than our impending obliteration. Say that multitude 2 times. So it is ultimately natural that we should fear death. There are 2 ways to deal with that fear, the common way and the smart way. The common way is to put it out of our mind, limit our awareness of it, try not to think about it. That tends to work fine when we're young, but the longer we put it off, the closer it gets. And after a while, everything begins to become a reminder of death, the graduation of a child, the illness of a friend, the creak in a joint. In other words, the common way is very smart. In fact, the more we put off facing our death, the more frightening our old age is going to be. The smart way is to face death as early as possible. And in doing so, we can realize something really rather simple. And that is insofar as we can overcome any narcissism, and we can probably never do this totally. By the way, we're all human. My side note, we can overcome our fear of death. For people who succeed at this, the prospect of death becomes a magnificent stimulus for the psychological and spiritual growth. Since I'm going to die anyways, they think, what's the point of preserving this attachment I have to my silly old self? And so they set forth on a journey towards selflessness. It's not an easy journey. The tentacles of our narcissism are subtle and penetrating and have to be hacked away day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. 40 years after first recognizing my own narcissism is what Scott Peck shared, I'm still hacking away. It's not an easy journey, but what a worthwhile journey it is. Because the further we proceed in diminishing our narcissism, our self-centeredness, and our self-importance, the more we discover ourselves becoming not only less fearful of death, but also less fearful of life. And we become more loving, no longer burdened by the need to protect ourselves. We are able to lift our eyes off ourselves and to truly recognize others. And we begin to experience a sustained underlying kind of happiness that we never experienced before as we become progressively more self-forgetful and hence more able to remember God. This is the central message of all the great religions. Learn how to die. Again and again, they tell us that the path away from narcissism is the path toward meaning. Buddhists and Hindus speak of this in terms of the necessity for self-detachment. And indeed, for them, even the notion of the self is an illusion. Jesus spoke of it in similar terms. Whosoever will save his life, that is, Robert Scott Peck said, that is, whosoever will hold on to his narcissism will lose it. And whosoever will lose his life for my sake will find it. As I shared with my son one day, we're all narcissists in small to extreme fashions, because whenever we're focused on self, and self-care is a valuable gift, as long as it's not at the cost of hurting somebody else. So the gift moving forward in this Good Friday is that, as somebody was kind to remind me, even Jesus bled out of every pore, understanding, I'll let that define for yourself, the understanding of the self he was going through for our benefit. And if you've not understood that story, happy to share, happy to direct you to people that will share. Most importantly, the gift that was given in that moment of commitment and decision was a choice that we were given to decide to receive that. And the whole concept of redemption for relationships, for our eternal being, is the decision to understand the gift of Good Friday in our specific belief systems. Whatever yours is, we get choice. We get the opportunity to understand who God is. We get the opportunity to understand that selflessness is a choice, and understanding how to meet people where they are and to be willing to be the vessel for that individual is a gift we're all given through the redemption of Good Friday and the days moving forward. It is a Freedom Friday, and we are thankful that you listen. We're thankful that you share your thoughts, and most importantly, that you choose to let go a little bit more of our self-focus and look into how we can be truly building bridges and relationships and commitments to move out of our narcissism, how little or immense that we may have it. And we all have different times and seasons that happens, that we show up and give freedom to ourselves and others by saying, I'm willing to be thankful and let go of my life to be that resource, that vessel for another. Thank you for listening. Have an amazing, beautiful Easter weekend.